Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and today we have much news and rumors to discuss surrounding Nintendo Switch 2, including one rumor in particular that I actually find to be very exciting and has apparently been proven true, which seems to be supporting a variety of other rumors that are coming from one particular leaker that keeps getting right. There's even more validity that seems to be here than perhaps many have been thinking, which suggests a lot of other things could also be coming true, including my long-theorized Ocarina of Time remake. And that is just one of many topics we have to get into today. But before going forward, let me take this moment to point out that I am aiming to reach 50,000 subscribers by the time the Switch 2 launches on June 5th. So if you find yourself enjoying my content, your subscription would be appreciated. Now, on the note of Zelda, I do want to point out that a couple days ago from the Nintendo Today app, Nintendo released some new footage for The Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker for the Nintendo GameCube Classics app. And there's just something about this footage that really stands out to me. I think it looks wonderful, and I think it goes to show that these GameCube games are actually seeing a pretty nice improvement here. It's not just the resolution boost, but also the colors. They really pop, there's a vibrancy there. So these games look better, they look great. Now, it would be nice if Nintendo could go back and add a widescreen mode for all of the games, but it looks like for both N64 and GameCube, how it works, if there was already a widescreen mode, you can turn it on in the settings for these individual games, but if the game never had a widescreen mode, it's just not there. But can Nintendo go back and rework this for some of the games? They could, will they? We're not sure. But what I will argue is probably far more exciting news is that we're hearing some pretty good things about the Nintendo Switch 2 Pro Controller here on this Reddit thread here. So yesterday I got to test out everything from the Switch 2 in the Amsterdam event, but there was one detail that no one had really talked about yet, and that is the D-pad of the Switch 2 Pro Controller. I played some Tears of the Kingdom with the Pro Controller, I got in the menu, I started rocking the D-pad to test any missed inputs, and absolutely nothing. They fixed the D-pad. And you know, I will say that when it comes to Breath and Tears, I have used the D-pad a lot because you need to for these games. And there have been many times where I accidentally do something because my original Pro Controller for the Switch 1, that D-pad, is not so good. So to hear impressions like this, that the D-pad feels pretty good, is nice to hear, that it seems to be dealing with the stress test of doing all these different interactions. And it is kind of a funny thing that we've gotten all these impressions for the Switch 2 and the Pro Controller, but not many people have noticed the D-pad. Everyone else is noticing everything else, like the comfortable grips, the HD Rumble 2, these smooth gliding sticks, the shoulder buttons, it feels fantastic, but the one big issue that we have not really gotten confirmation of yet is if the D-pad is better than the original, which had issues. And from the impressions of this one person here, it bodes quite well. The Switch 2 Pro Controller might just have a chance of being the best controller there is. I'm glad I got mine pre-ordered. Moving on to what may be upsetting news for some, apparently Nintendo is saying that they reserve the right to brick any of your Switch systems if you bypass, modify, decrypt, defeat, tamper with their games in their most recent user agreement. Here they say, when we scroll down, we can see it, they say, you acknowledge that if you fail to comply with the foregoing restrictions, Nintendo may render the Nintendo account services and or the applicable Nintendo device permanently unusable in whole or in part. So that is pretty intense. I will say personally, doesn't really make much of a difference to me because I do not plan on going against Nintendo's user agreement. And I also think it is worth noting that you've always been at risk for violating Nintendo's user agreement. I guess the only difference now is that Nintendo is stating that they might actually actively do something themselves if they find that you are doing something with your account or one of your systems that Nintendo finds is worthy of action. So my advice is, don't do something that could end up with your Switch or Switch 2 getting bricked. Moving on to some other controversial news, apparently, the Doom Dark Ages disc will contain nothing but data confirming the ability to download the game from the internet for PlayStation 5. There's going to be over 80 gigabytes to download for this game, even if you buy the disc, which many might find interesting because this sounds a lot like a game keycard for Nintendo Switch 2. And Nintendo's gotten a lot of flack lately for these game keycards, but it looks like this is just the standard for companies in general. I really doubt this just became a thing because Nintendo announced game keycards. More likely, a lot of developers were already headed in this direction because games are getting larger, and a lot of cartridges and perhaps even discs cannot hold that space if they are going to be distributing an affordable version of that disc or cartridge. So I can understand why a lot of people would not like this, but it's something that we're seeing across the industry, not just for Nintendo Switch 2. Moving on to some more positive news though, Fantasy Li-Fi: The Girl Who Steals Time, it has been announced that there will be a Switch 2 edition, and this new edition will have improved quality in terms of a higher resolution and an improved frame rate. Now you will have to pay for this improvement if you have the version for Switch 1, but apparently it's only 300 yen, which is the equivalent to about $2 USD, so that would be a pretty cheap upgrade. I wonder what other Switch 2 editions we'll start to see. I know about the Civilization one. Hogwarts Legacy does not have a Switch 2 edition, it's just a new game on Switch 2. I would love to see them actually announce a Switch 2 edition version, or rather some sort of upgrade option. That way, if you already have Hogwarts Legacy for Switch 1, you can't upgrade it. Maybe it's more expensive because they did build this version from the ground up, or it's not based at all on the Switch 1 version, which I somewhat understand. But having people buy the whole game again, I don't really like that at all. Moving on to a leaker, or someone who's known to have leaked or rumored things in the past, Necrofelipe from Universal Nintendo, they just shared this from the Nintendo Today app, and this is the box art, the back of Mario Kart World. There's nothing crazy here that I've noticed from an information perspective. I haven't made any other discoveries about Mario Kart World, at least not from the back of this box art at least. It's pretty much just par for the course, pun intended there. But it looks great. I really like what we're seeing here. The box art is pretty cool looking. However, I will say, this other version here looks pretty good too. It looks better, I would argue, because there's a lot more imagery there. So I'm a little jealous, but either way, box art looks great. However, Necrofelipe did provide an interesting rumor as well. So, Arc System Works from Guilty Gear Strive is working on a Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive game codenamed Watari that uses Unreal Engine 5 and could arrive in November. XOX Leak is a reputable leaker who has correctly leaked everything about Marvel Rivals. So he's sharing out this information from this leaker here and vouching for their credibility, and I think this is very interesting. Another Switch 2 exclusive from a known developer that's known to be putting out some pretty good games, an Unreal Engine 5 game. We're getting a lot of third-party Switch 2 exclusives. We have the Duskbloods, we have Hades 2. This is another very interesting one, and it looks like we'll probably be hearing about it relatively soon if it is due to be coming out this November. So I would assume maybe in the next big direct, perhaps this June, or maybe in Summer Games Fest. Sometime in June seems like a pretty strong likelihood. But now let's get into that big surprising rumor that has been proven true. So as you see here it's being reported by Go Nintendo that Switch 2 advertising is now showing up in New York City. And here we can see some really awesome advertisements for the Switch 2, Mario Kart World, Throwdown, Together. That's all awesome. But here they say, Nintendo Switch 2, Power Up, available June 5th, 2025. I love that. I love the red branding for Nintendo. I love that they're going in this direction with powering up. It's cool stuff, and it reminds me of a different time, which goes back to this rumor from way back for Nash Weedle. Nash Weedle actually shared out that a while back, he had talked about on multiple posts that Nintendo was looking into advertising the Switch 2 by going back to something they've done in the past. Now you're playing with power. He talked about this back last year, January. So almost a year and a half ago, he was talking about that Nintendo would be going back to this idea of that you're now playing with power. And a lot of people were arguing with him about it, and then he showed evidence that Nintendo has a history of doing this, as we saw what they did with the NES and the Super Nintendo and the Game Boy. We're seeing here that they are doing it again. Nintendo is playing with power. Let's remind ourselves that we just got that Paul Rudd commercial, which is a spiritual successor to the original Paul Rudd commercial, where it was about playing with power, and so now they're doing that again for the Nintendo Switch 2. And so this is a very cool big deal. Why is it a big deal? Because it shows that Nintendo is marketing things in an exciting way. It's calling back to a prior time, but also being done in a modern way, and I think they're going to be successful with it. But it also adds even more validity, even more reason to trust Nash Weedle with all the different things they have been saying. A lot of things that they've been saying over the last few years, it's been kind of like, okay, well, we'll see, right? And what's interesting is that now that Switch 2 is coming out and all the marketing is coming out, and we're seeing what Nintendo's plans are actually for Switch 2, a lot of different things that Nash Weedle told us about regarding Nintendo's plans for Switch 2 are coming to fruition. This marketing strategy about going back to the whole playing with power thing, evolving your game experiences. We look at the Switch 2 editions, for example, and how those have been improved. Even the GameCube games on the GameCube app as well. A lot of things Nash Weedle said have come to fruition. We've talked about other things. We've recently got a rating for Assassin's Creed Shadows, which Nash Weedle said would be coming to Switch 2, as well as Elden Ring Special Edition, we know as Charge Edition, Metroid Prime 4 Controls, Donkey Kong Bonanza as opposed to 3D Mario in the Direct. These are all recent things that Nash Weedle has said. And so going back to what I mentioned in the beginning of the video, there are a variety of other things that haven't been proven true yet, but given how much Nash Weedle seems to be getting right here, it's not just random third-party games, it's also first-party games, but even Nintendo marketing plans, which would suggest that this person actually has a very strong connection to what Nintendo is doing behind the scenes. And several rumors they have talked about in the past, a Pikmin spin-off, for example, 3D Mario having to do with other worlds, some big surprise title that's supposed to be announced for this year for Switch 2, which I don't think is 3D Mario, nor do I think is Zelda, we've talked about that already. And then recently I did notice that this person, Nash Weedle, did technically support the idea that an Ocarina of Time remake could be in the works. He was asked about it, he said it wouldn't be happening this year, implying in another year, which I've been theorizing that Nintendo's been working on this game, and that it'll be coming out for the 40th anniversary for The Legend of Zelda, which would be next year, when also they would start marketing for the next big Zelda movie a little bit afterwards, because it comes out March 2027, the movie. So Nash Weedle continues to get things correct here, and this leaker, in my opinion, is rising up the ranks in credibility. Perhaps more so than others, because others don't have this same level of information about this company. That doesn't mean they won't be wrong in the future though, so for sure, take everything they say with a grain of salt. And also a reminder, we did talk about Samus Hunter last year, who had gotten 3 really hard to predict announcements in a row, but then afterwards turned out to be a total sham. So maybe they had access to information for a little bit, and then they lost it all and they wanted to continue because they really liked the popularity. Maybe they just got extremely lucky, which I personally doubt. But point is, yeah, take these things with a grain of salt. Either way, it has me excited for what may be coming down the road for Nintendo Switch 2. But what do you all think? Let me know in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I'll see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.